Namaste, namaste. I see you, beautiful people. This is Silvia Mordini, the founder of Alchemy of Yoga, and this is your Yoga Sutras Jam for the day. Woo, so exciting. We are up to chapter 1, verse 4. So I told you 2 days ago that chapter 1, verse 2, chapter 1, verse 3, chapter 1, verse 4 all kind of work together and tell us why it is that we practice yoga. Like, what is it all about? What does it serve us? So I thought I'd go back and just read you a summary of the translations of 1.2, 3, and 4 all together so that you can put it in context. So here we go from Nischala Joy Devi. Chapter 1, verse 2, yoga is the uniting of consciousness in the heart. Chapter 1, verse 3, united in the heart, consciousness is steadied. Then we abide in our true nature, joy. And then, chapter 1, verse 4, at other times, we identify with the rays of consciousness, which fluctuate and encourage our perceived suffering. So, this could happen, or this could happen. We could connect to our true nature, which is joy, because that is how we're made. Or we could connect to this other stuff, all the dukkha, the bad stuff, that cause us to suffer. So which do you choose on a daily basis? Option 1 or option 2? And therein lies the issue. I'll read you a couple more translations as I've done every day so that you have more than just one input, and then you can discern for yourself the meaning. So the next translation of chapter 1, verse 4, at other times when one is not in self-realization, the seer appears to take on the form of the modifications of the mind field, taking on the identity of those thought patterns. The next translation. Up till now, the inner persons have identified themselves with their forms and with their active modifications. Otherwise, we identify with the activities of the mind. Let that land for a moment. And so what does it all mean? What does this sutra have to tell us about suffering and happiness and what you can do? Well, here's the thing. In a nutshell, what it means is stop believing everything you think. Just stop believing everything that you think. Because those thoughts that you're thinking that are causing suffering, well, are they true? And if given the choice to choose thoughts that are limiting, that are negative, that are dark, that are debilitating, or those that are loving, supportive, honest, and true, which do you want to choose? First, it's a question of applying discernment, which ones are true. In the work of Don Miguel Ruiz, in the companion guide to the Four Agreements, love Don Miguel Ruiz and all of his work, he refers to this as the parasite. So if you are thinking thoughts that are like a monster inside the mind, that are parasitic and are causing pain and suffering, well, then you know that they're not true. If you are thinking thoughts that are supportive, loving, and elevate your spirit, then those are true. Because our hearts would never have the intention to make us stay in a state of suffering. Is pain part of the human condition? Yes, that's inevitable. But we do not have to stay in a constant state of suffering or prolonged suffering. And so when you have a thought like, I have an anxious thought, and I start to believe then that I am an anxious person and that I'll never not have anxiety. That is that parasite. That is the rays of suffering. Because the mind can change its thoughts and we can instead move our focus over here. Yes, maybe I've had this momentary experience of anxiety, but it is not definitive. It doesn't define me. I'm not an anxious person just because I had this thought and this associated feeling of anxiety. Or maybe you've done something that you're like, gosh, I wish I hadn't done that. All right, then you can get caught up in blaming yourself and belittling yourself, like, oh my gosh, I've done something bad, therefore I am a bad person. And you can get really caught up and believe that. And so this is the thing. We make shit up all the time. We make it up because we use our imagination for the dark side, or we could use the imagination for the good. But as we make stuff up, we can actually start to believe it. Another example in a practical way, always a practical mystic in this world, you get an email, right? Or a text, and you read it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're saying that to me right now. And you reread it and you reread it and you read into it using the imagination, and you're so offended. And truly, it could only say, hey, do you want to go to lunch? But you've lost your mind about it. So then what do? You forward it to friends, and then you try to recruit them into this made stuff up context. Like, oh my God, don't you see how offensive they are and how they're saying it and the tone behind those words? Do you want to go to lunch? And your friends are like, yeah, no, that's not true. I don't see that at all. And then what we do is we go and we recruit other friends. I'm going to forward it on until I find somebody that agrees with me that this is absolutely against me and they're trying to hurt me. And so then all of this disarray and dissonance gets us all worked up. But it was just, hey, do you want to go to lunch? That's it. And so we can have to pull ourselves back and look at, are we pouring more into an interpretation, making assumptions, taking things personally that are not true at all? Are we purposely trying to make ourselves suffer? Because the sutras tell us that at some point, you guys, at some point, if you do these practices, you will lose all interest in suffering. And that's the day I hope for you. That you just aren't interested in suffering anymore. You're like, I'm just not going to pay suffering attention anymore. I'm done with that. And that's where this practice can bring you. But you have to know that there is that possibility where you start to believe everything you think and the fluctuations. Does he love me? Does he not love me? Maybe he doesn't love me anymore. Like, we've all been through that in relationship with ourselves, with others. And right now is that time in the world where we can get really caught up with making things up, assuming things, reading into things, rather than just staying with reality. And then the reality is your true nature is joy, and that's how you're made. So from my heart to your heart, I'm so grateful that you're spending just these 11 minutes each day in a Yoga Sutras jam. And check out YouTube if you want longer jams on the sutras or practices or anything that's going to elevate your spirit. I have a lot of cool stuff out on my YouTube channel. And don't forget that my online yoga teacher training program, 8 Weeks of Bliss, starts May 4th. It is filling fast. And the Yoga Sutras are part of that program. They're a required element of Yoga Alliance, but of course they are, because they are like where yoga comes from. That and the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads. But we're going to go into the sutras in depth. They are a handbook on happiness. They've changed my life. I think they can change your life. And I'm so stoked to be with my online tribe and my online family. So peace out for now. Big namaste, super namaste. But thank you guys. Bye-bye.